Hello and welcome to the Monocle Weekly. This time we feature the inaugural edition of the Beauvoir Jazz Festival, set to take place in London on July the 11th and 12th. Set up by local resident and designer Payal Wadhwa, it is a jazz festival for the neighborhood, integrating different spaces and inviting world-class jazz artists from around the world. It was a pleasure to speak with both Payal and Peter Horsfall, their artistic director. Payal Wadhwa and Pete Horsfall from the Beauvoir Jazz Festival, the very first one. I might start with you, Payal, the founder of the festival, if I may say, and is that your first festival, something similar that you're organizing, actually? Tell us a bit more, because you come from a slightly different background.
I come from a completely different world. It is my first festival that I'm organizing. I'm very grateful for Pete to have put some trust into this one and said yes, to have been a part of the mix. I've worked in design and civic innovation for about 20 odd years before this. It was time for me to start thinking about what I wanted to do next, particularly outside my doorstep. And I think talk is cheap. You can preach at other people and try and do things through them, but it takes a lot of effort to do it yourself. So trying to do something that makes a difference in the neighborhood that I live in.
We'll talk about the neighborhood very soon, but also jazz was always one of your passions as well?
So I really like the music. I am married to a man who is an encyclopedia on jazz. So I think he's more obsessed with it than I am, but it's the kind of music that is, all over the house at all points in time. I'm very interested in performing arts at large and in cultural production. And I've spent a lot of time trying to figure out how, I guess, those things make a difference to society. So there's something in there that I'm exploring. But if I'd like pop more, this could have been the Beauvoir Pop Festival. So yeah, but I think I do like jazz more than I like pop.
What about you, Pete? How did you get involved actually with the festival? And I want to know a bit more about your background as well.
So Payal approached me at a gig, which is what I spend, 99% of my time doing.
Not bad. That's not bad.
Well, maybe 98%. As she rightly says, there's a lot of people come up to you at a lot of gigs and say a lot of things. I want to do this, I want to do that. Oh, could you come and play for us here? Could you come and play for us there? People promise you the world, So it's great to meet somebody that actually has got not just the intention, but the willingness to do the grind of organising cultural events, It's the same with gigs, I find. Maybe for some people from the outside, it seems, oh, you turn up and play and it's wonderful and everybody loves it, and then you go home and it's just great. And that whilst there's a nugget of truth somewhere in there, it's very deeply hidden, because the rest of it is actually the grind of rehearsing, practicing every day, every single day for donkey's years, setting up gigs, making sure everybody's there, making sure everybody knows what they're playing. And then actually the performance is the easy bit, is the pleasurable bit, The rest of it is the grind. So anyway, it's nice to work with anybody that is willing to put in that time, because that's really what needs to be done for anything to happen.
It's interesting what Peter was saying, because I can imagine that, making your festival, especially if it's the first one, can be quite challenging. You have to talk with authorities and, So tell us about some of those challenges. Was it how you expected?
It has been. I guess a lot of the work I used to do in my other life before I decided to start a festival involved trying to bring a lot of stakeholders around a table and get people to identify what was needed, right? So I spent a decent amount of time in community engagement. I spent a lot of time building digital products. So when you do that, you have to do a lot of user research. So there are some transferable skills from my other life that I can bring to this. So I spent a lot of time trying to understand who the big, personalities were within our neighborhood, who were doing some really interesting things for the community. Spent a decent amount of time getting to know them better. I knew some of them, but I didn't know all of them. I spent a lot of time meeting businesses. We have many fiercely independent businesses in the neighborhood. So really understanding, how they may react to a particular event in the neighborhood happening. But also a lot of time with Hackney Council, who've been incredibly supportive. We've had 3 local councillors who I've been seeking advice from. Chris Kennedy, who works at Hackney Council, Joe and Jasmine, who are our local councillors, have been nothing but incredible. So I think it's been really nice to get to this point, having worked with people rather than do something at them, which is what I've always been very conscious of. It takes work, making sure people understand where you're coming at things from and why you're trying to do things a certain way. And we are a community interest company. So also the governance of, I guess, the organization, making sure people understand that this is not for profit, has made a big difference to setting things up in the right way.
And Peter, I think there was definitely a space for a festival like this. Looking at some numbers, there's more people listening to jazz. I think it's going through a good moment, jazz music in general, especially young musicians. How do you see the world of jazz today? How are you excited about these new artists and everything?
I think if I could give you a very bland press release answer, which would be, yes, it's wonderful that the jazz renaissance in London is just, getting to dizzying new heights. But the reality is, how do I see the jazz scene? I think there's always an element in it where you look at the press around something, it says that there's a renaissance of something. You think, we've been here all along. Not just me, but I learned from much older musicians than me, as should be the case, and they pass things down. But the especially in a city like London, aside from New York, I think maybe New Orleans as well, in a very different way. They've all got their own styles, but the scene is incredibly strong in London with the standard of players, the breadth and depth, the best in Europe by quite a long way, if you want to be a regular giggy musician. And so I think it's great to have these bigger cultural events that highlight, it kind of highlights what's already there, which is how it should be, and is what we're trying to do with the festival. It's not to say we're bringing in things from far afield. There's nothing wrong with that. But the style of this festival is, look at what we already have and let's celebrate it, not only in the neighbourhood, but in London at large. We've got there's no other way to describe it, world-class musicians who are working every day, every week, every month in London at venues. You might be on your way out on an evening. You might be passing Ronnie Scott's or the Pizza Express on Dean Street, or any number of different venues in London, and you might be finding homegrown talent that's always been here, is still here, and we're just shining a light on that. Yeah.
That's fantastic. And Payal, I want to go back to the idea of this being a neighborhood festival. I was reading, the lineup and, the venues, and that's very much a neighborhood kind of festival. And I think that's not necessarily the case with other jazz festivals. And by the way, for our listeners who are not from London, the Beauvoir is a beautiful area here, right, of the UK. I think we need to kind of tell them.
It really is. It's a deep privilege to live in it. I found myself in that area 16 years ago when I moved from India to London, and I found a place on Gumtree, as one would, 16 years ago in Beauvoir. So I've been in love with the neighborhood.
Very lucky.
Very lucky. It wasn't what it is like today. Then it wasn't as trendy, possibly. It's a lovely neighborhood that's nestled between Islington and Hackney. More of it sits within Hackney than it does within Islington. What's really lovely about the neighborhood is that it's got a very specific character that's almost reflective of all of London in one little area. Most people walk, most people cycle, and it's not completely by accident. It's all down to design. In the late 1960s, 1970s, there was a plan to actually raise the entire neighborhood to the ground and build a big highway. And a bunch of residents got together and protested against it. And in doing so, not only did they save most of the neighborhood from being razed to the ground, they actually managed to convert most of the neighborhood into a low-traffic neighborhood. So, we talk about low-traffic neighborhoods today in London, but it is one of London's oldest low-traffic space. It's been about 50 years. The way they turned it into a low-traffic neighborhood is by planting cherry trees around the neighborhood. So it's really lovely, because what you have is the most beautiful part of London, where people can cycle, people can walk, and that's how most people get around, with lots of different spaces that are possibly not spaces where you would host music regularly. But the point of the festival is to open them up to people, to help people discover those spaces, understand the built environment of that neighborhood, but also begin to appreciate what cultural production can do to those spaces. So quite excited about it. We've got about 8 different venues for one of the days of the 2-day festival. And these 8 venues will be simultaneous venues. So it's a multi-venue festival. Can't wait for it to happen in July.
Amazing. And Pete, I wonder if you could share perhaps some of the names and performance. Will it be a mix of kind of people, well-known artists and maybe not so well-known? So tell us a bit more about the curation.
We've got probably, if you like clarinet, if you like the clarinet as an instrument, I tell you, this festival is for you. We've got 3. I want to see the armies of clarinet fans heading to the festival. Now, we've got three of the, I'd say, the world's best jazz clarinet players playing. The first being Giacomo Smith, who people might know from the band Kansas Smitties, which I was also a part of. Also performing worldwide, performing concertos in concert halls, as well as, every major jazz club that you can think of. In addition to him, we've got Adrian Cox, who's like a specialist in the history of the clarinet, really. He's kind of a walking encyclopedia of the history of New Orleans clarinet playing. So we've got him playing in the church, delivering like a set of spirituals and in the New Orleans style. And also we've got Ewan Bleach, who is, again, spent much time in New Orleans playing with a famous band out there called Tuba Skinny. He was in London. And again, all these people are out there working in London a lot, but we're just shining that extra little bit of light on them that they so rightly deserve. So that's 3 clarinet players for you, just for a start.
So if you're listening, you're a clarinet fan, you have to come now. And
Definitely got to come.
Well, how small is that niche, do you think?
well, I think there's more than we expect, right?
I mean, we've got a lot more going on. We've got Georgia Cecile playing on our opening night. I'm so excited about that. Also, just like incredible to see a woman as amazing as her having agreed to play a festival like ours. We're a first-time festival, so I'm so grateful she's agreed to play. For
sure. And I think Georgia, Georgia Cecile, she's like, how do I say this? She's ploughing her own furrow, a bit like someone like in the pop world, like Little Sims or someone like that, is basically eschewing like big labels and things like that, and is doing everything herself, and winning. Great to see her headlining festivals, headlining Ronnie Scott's, and now headlining our festival as well.
Payal, I need to ask you the basics as well. If somebody's interested and they want to get a ticket or find out a bit more, what should they do?
So come see our website. It's called the Beauvoir Jazz Festival. .co.uk. If you're trying to figure out how to spell this, think of the author Simone de Beauvoir, and it is effectively the surname in there. So the Beauvoir Jazz Festival.co.uk. All of our tickets are on our website. We have a range of things going on over the course of the 2 days. So the festival's on the 11th of July and the 12th of July. 11th is our opening night, and we've got Georgia, and we've also got Gordon Webster flying in from New York, playing effectively a swing set at Bishopsgate Institute. So we're very excited about that day. And then on the 12th...
That's if you're a Lindy Hop dancer. So if you're a dancer, that's the one for you in the festival for sure.
Absolutely. And on the 12th, we've got a whole day's events planned. So it starts at 9 a.m. and it ends at 11 p.m. And I'll try not to hog all this time on the radio to tell you about the entire program, but there's a lot going on. We've got approximately about 8 free things going on at the festival, and we've got a whole lot of other gigs, approximately about 7 of them that are ticketed. Tickets are highly subsidized thanks to an Arts Council grant.
Thank you, Arts Council England.
I know, I'm so grateful because it really helps us make sure we're pricing things right. And we're also able to offer subsidized tickets to residents of the 3 local estates in the neighborhood. And so those are £5 tickets, and so we're very grateful for Arts Council to allow us to do so.
Especially in these days of ticket prices for gigs, We all know that what's happened in the last kind of 10, 20 years, so it's important to us to keep the accessible, in any way that we could. And the grant from the Arts Council has certainly helped with that.
I think in addition to the Arts Council grant, it's also amazing to have Englefield Charitable Trust having helped us out with a small grant. They're a neighbourhood charity, and it really goes a long way to make sure that we can make sure everyone's included in the festival and everyone's invited.
That's amazing. Listen, Payal and Pete, thank you so much for coming in. A pleasure.
Pleasure, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Payal and Peter. For more information and tickets, go to the Beauvoir Jazz Festival.co.uk/tickets. The show was edited by Elliot Greenfield. Thank you for listening.